Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder why telling a doctor you are in pain can feel like a whole different language? Well, this new study dives deep into how autistic adults communicate their pain to healthcare professionals. That quote pretty much sums up the challenge many autistic adults face. Imagine feeling pain intensely but struggling to get that across to your doctor. This research set out to understand those struggles, looking at autistic adults who have tried to get help for their pain from healthcare professionals. Autism spectrum condition, or ASC, affects about 1% of us and is linked to many other health issues, some of which cause chronic pain. This means autistic people often need to seek medical help, but the way healthcare works can be really challenging for them. A lot of the past research focused on kids, looking at how they react to pain. But what about adults? It turns out that tools used in healthcare, like pain scales, might not be the best fit for autistic individuals. One big piece of the puzzle is something called interoception. Think of it as your body's internal GPS, the sense that tells you what is happening inside your body, like feeling hunger or having a stomach ache. For some autistic adults, their interoceptive signals can be different, sometimes stronger, sometimes weaker. This can make it super hard to tell exactly where pain is or what kind of pain it is. Another key factor is sensory sensitivities. Many autistic people experience the world more intensely through their senses. Sounds might be too loud, lights too bright, textures too much. Healthcare settings, often noisy and bright, can be overwhelming, making it even harder to focus on communicating pain. Then there is the general communication itself. This research highlights something called the double empathy problem. It's the idea that communication isn't just about one person failing to express themselves, but also about the other person failing to understand. Sometimes autistic and non-autistic people just have different ways of experiencing and communicating things, and that can lead to misunderstanding. So, to understand this better, the researchers talked to autistic adults who have sought help for pain. They used a method called interpretative phenomenological analysis, or IPA. Don't let the fancy name scare you. It is basically a deep dive into individual experiences, trying to understand the meaning behind what people say. They interviewed 4 participants, digging into their experiences with interoception, sensory issues, and communication with doctors. What did they find? Mostly negative experiences, but within those, some really strong themes emerged. First up, many participants talked about the significant effort they put into preparing for appointments. They'd write lists, do their own research, and try to anticipate what the doctor might need. A huge theme was feeling unseen and unheard. It is like they were talking, but the healthcare professionals just weren't really listening or believing them. Imagine putting all that effort into preparing, only to feel dismissed. Another major issue was that healthcare professionals were often inflexible. They struggled to understand or accept that autistic people might communicate or experience things differently. Participants were aware that the NHS is busy, but they desperately needed more time to explain themselves. Rushed appointments meant their complex experiences couldn't be properly understood. This is a really interesting one. The participants knew they communicated differently and that their experiences as an autistic person were unique. But this self-awareness didn't make the process any easier. In fact, it seemed to add another layer of difficulty. Remember those pain scales we talked about? Pretty much everyone in the study hated them. They found it hard to pinpoint their pain or describe it numerically, especially when their interoception was tricky. When misunderstandings happen, it leads to participants feeling invalidated, like their pain wasn't real or important. This then, unsurprisingly, leads to poor care. And sadly, some participants experienced unprofessionalism and incorrect care, which just made the whole experience of seeking help even more difficult. Let's look at one participant, Mackenzie. They described having to use objective measures to make their pain believable because their own words weren't enough. They felt like their mental health was suffering from chronic pain and dismissal from healthcare professionals, leading to a feeling of defeat. Then there is Lachlan, who felt doctors simply dismiss what he was saying because he is autistic. He found pain scales worthless, because pain is always subjective. Elite spoke about how as soon as healthcare providers heard she was autistic, they stopped talking to her directly and started talking to the person she was with. This meant she couldn't report her symptoms properly. Cameron found that many ways healthcare professionals tried to communicate just didn't work for them. They used nonverbal cues like wincing, but these were often missed. So, summing up these powerful individual stories, the researchers identified these overarching master themes. All participants felt ignored and dismissed by healthcare professionals, suggesting a fundamental barrier to being believed. Understanding their own unique way of communicating and experiencing the world didn't automatically solve the problem. It often added complexity. The struggle with identifying and quantifying pain was a universal issue. making standard pain assessment tools ineffective. Misunderstandings directly translated into feeling invalidated and receiving inadequate medical attention. Incidents of unprofessional behavior and incorrect care from healthcare providers compounded the communication difficulties. What does this all mean? The researchers suggest a few key things for healthcare professionals. First, give autistic patients more time. The double empathy problem and the need for autistic individuals to translate their experiences mean appointments often need to be longer. Second, listen to and trust patient experiences. Active listening, a skill beneficial for all patients, is crucial here. Dismissing pain because of an autism diagnosis is not acceptable. Third, find better ways to assess pain. Since pain scales and relying solely on interoception are problematic, exploring alternatives is vital. Imagine a traffic light system where green means okay, amber means struggling, and red means immediate help is needed. Offering written communication options like lists or emails could also make a huge difference. Now, every study has its limits. A big one here is that participants reported their experiences orally, something that can be difficult for some autistic people. Future research could offer written or email options. Also, most participants had chronic pain, and communicating acute pain might be different. Interestingly, the researchers found that across participants, the negative experiences were quite similar. This suggests that while IPA is great for deep individual experience, larger studies using different methods might be needed to get a broader picture. They also questioned if IPA, which looks for deeper meaning, is always the best fit when participants describe experiencing the world, literally. So, in conclusion, this study powerfully highlights that autistic adults are facing significant barriers when communicating pain to healthcare professionals. It is not just about how they express themselves, it is also about how well healthcare systems and professionals are equipped to understand and respond. The biggest takeaway is the urgent need for better training for healthcare professionals on autism spectrum condition. This, alongside developing new tools to help autistic people communicate their pain, is essential for ensuring they receive the adequate and appropriate care they deserve. This research is so important because it gives a voice to experiences that are often overlooked. It reminds us that a little more understanding, a little more time, and a willingness to adapt can make a world of difference for autistic individuals seeking healthcare. What are your thoughts on this? Have you or someone you know had similar experiences? Let us know in the comments below, and if you found this breakdown helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more science deep dives, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.